Good evening everyone and welcome back to Woodcrafter's Corner. Today we're going to be taking a look at the 4 most basic cuts that you need for wood carving and whittling as a beginner. You can count them 1, 2, 3, 4. Now of course those are just fingers, but if we talk about the actual cuts, you'll see how important they are. So the first one let's talk about is the stop cut. Now this one you'll probably be using one of the most frequently. Now of course I have a 1 by 1 by 6 inch blank here of basswood, and I think these are fantastic for carving and whittling practice, and you can find a link for them in my description. I just buy them off eBay. But anyway, the stop cut looks like this. So I'm going to grab a corner here, and all I'm going to do is push into it like so, and then so we have a little line. I'm going to come in from the bottom and push up to it, and that kind of stops the flow, if you will. So we'll do it again. Push in, sweep up, push in. It can be shorter, it can be longer, whatever it is. That's a stop cut. Basically, you're stopping the flow. Now that comes to be very useful because as you can kind of see, this sort of looks like a nose, but I don't want to spoil how that's going to look for you. Now you can work your way all the way down through here and practice this kind of like I've done on the other side, and that's a great way to do it. But let's move on to the next one. We have 4 corners and 4 cuts, so that's the stop cut right there. Let's go to the second one. Now this is what's called a V-cut. This can take many different forms, and it's on the surface level a lot like a stop cut, except you're going to come in at an angle here. So this way first, and then this way second. So here's what that looks like. Hopefully you can kind of see what I'm doing here. I'm pushing in at an angle and pushing in at an angle. So similar to a stop cut, but you obviously get a V shape. So you can come in here, do the same thing. We're just practicing. So that's your V cut. Now that is used a lot for eyes because you can kind of tell as long as it's a bigger one. Let's try a bigger one here. Pushing in, make it a little deeper. As you start to get a little bit more practiced, you can make this your eye cutout area for maybe like a wood spirit or something like that. But maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's move on to the next one. Now this is the most basic cut that you can come across. Why didn't I start with it? Well, I don't know. I just went with it, okay? So basically, it's called a push cut or a sweep cut, whatever you want to call it, and it's the same action we did in the stop cut leading up to the point where we stopped it, except this time we're not going to stop it. Here's what it looks like. Very simple. But as you can see, we're left with this kind of swoop, if you will. And we can make that a little deeper if we want. Not too deep, or it'll start to break off, obviously. But all we're doing is pushing away from us. Now the key with this, especially if you want to be more controlled, unless you're trying to take out a big chunk of wood, which with a small piece like this is less common, you want to be very controlled. Now some people call this a lever cut or whatever, but basically all you want to do is use your thumb to push a little bit, but also as mainly support. So there's a couple ways you can do this. You can push through using your thumb. I'm not even pushing with my hand here. I'm just pushing forward with my thumb. That is very controlled. You can also use it as a fulcrum, if you will. So I start here, and I'm not moving anything but my hand down, and that makes this. Now that is a very controlled way to do things, especially if you get up towards the end grain here. It tends to just pop off like that, but you want to make it controlled. Just lever it up like that. So that is a couple of different ways to do a sweep cut or just a push cut, whatever you want to call it. Very simple, very straightforward. The key is to not go crazy pushing like this, because not only will that take off more than you probably intend, but you would risk cutting yourself here, and it's just be more controlled with it. So push, try to imagine you're pulling the wood down through this while pushing off with your thumb, like that. So that's pretty much that one. Now the next one, this one's a little bit more advanced, but not terrible. And this is the paring cut. Now this one's actually a little bit easier to show up here. Now generally speaking, if you're woodworking or anything like that, you are told not to cut towards yourself. Like you don't want to be cutting like this, and that's of course true. But for those areas where you need to get a little more technical control, especially for certain angles, you probably are going to need to pull towards yourself. So this is a pull cut or a paring cut. Some people call it different things. So to show you what it looks like, that's why I have the glove on this hand. That's pretty much it. Now you can tell I went really slowly there, and that's on purpose. You never want to get crazy with this one, because even though I have the glove on, which will pretty much stop it, it may not, and especially if the point gets down here, the gloves don't help with that at all. So that's the pull cut. Now in this case, since I do have the glove and I'm going super slow and I'm making a shallow cut, I'm okay with it coming down and hitting my glove, very controlled. But for those situations where maybe you're taking off more, or just to be extra safe, you don't want to have your thumb here. You want to keep your thumb down like this. So that way, as I'm pulling towards myself, if I was being unsafe, I'd be pulling towards myself and I could easily cut myself if I'm not being very careful. If I move my thumb out of the way though, like this, and also pull, you can see that even if I were to slip, oops, then my thumb is not in any danger whatsoever. So there you go. That is a paring cut. Now with this one, imagine again you're pushing the wood forward like this, and that way you keep all of the pressure on your thumb here. Now this is probably too much to take off, because if I pull, try to get it, I'm gonna slip. Well, like that also breaks off, so you got to be careful. But that's pretty much it. So those are your 4 basic ones. You got the stop cut, the V cut, the push cut or sweep cut, and the pull cut or the paring cut. With those 4, you can move on to great things. And those are your beginner cuts. Thanks for watching.